When these pictures were made, João Del Rei sat at midpoint on the 125-mile, 2-foot 6-inch gauge line that connected with a standard 5-foot 3-inch gauge to the east and a meter gauge line that ran several hundred miles in a northerly direction to the west. The meter gauge was once a part of this same 2-foot 6-inch empire with some 60 steam engines, including even Shays and Mallows, virtually all of them Baldwin locomotives from Philadelphia. The choice of 2.5-foot gauge seems to have been made by an American engineer who had worked with this width in the mountains of Chile. No such mountains, indeed scarcely any mountains at all, are apparent anywhere along the Brazilian route. Until 1949, the line featured sleeping cars and connected with river steamers on both the Rio Grande and the San Francisco. The river boats were still operating in 1981. At the time of this tape, much of the line to the north had been abandoned. Some of it had been widened to meter gauge and was operated by diesels. South of the western junction with the VFCO, the line had been electrified. Over the years, this part of the Brazilian railway system has had many different names, of which VFCO is only one of the most recent. Literally translated, it stands for Railway of the Central West. Brazilians still call the 125-mile remainder the only 2.5-foot steam-powered common carrier in the world. It was without doubt the best collection of small, U.S.-built steam locomotives to be found anywhere on Earth. Still, slide valves and all link and pin. Originally, all of the locomotives were either coal or wood-fired. This is the shell of what was once an 18-stall roundhouse, which burned in 1972. It has since been reconstructed at a cost of $3 million, which included even the recasting of the elaborate cast iron roof supports. The turntable has been restored and turns once again. The structure is part of a railway museum which displays the first locomotive acquired in 1881 and a collection of restored rolling stock, including coaches built by Harlan and Hollingsworth in Wilmington, Delaware. The steam-hauled tourist train now runs weekends and holidays between São João and Tiradentes. In this tape, you'll see 8 of these engines, and you'll follow the first segment of the railway to be completed, more than 100 years ago. Upgrade all the way from São João to Antônio Carlos beside the River of the Dead. The 62-mile ride on the daily mixed will require 4.5 hours with 4 stops. It will be a struggle, but the train never fails to arrive on time. The lifeblood of the railway was always freight, and in later years that was largely cement. Limestone inbound and the finished product out. It prospered during this construction of the Taipu Dam and the Iguaçu River, but traffic declined thereafter, and a landslide severed the tracks west of São João, cutting off limestone supplies to the cement plant. What remains today is operated as a tourist railroad. The narrow gauge ends at Antônio Carlos, where it connects with the standard 5-foot 3-inch gauge of the main line between Rio and Belo Horizonte. In the background you can see the Brazilian version of the GP-38 roaring through town with a string of hoppers loaded with iron ore for the steel mills at Rio.